If you're looking to pick out the best PC case for your next gaming PC, it can be really tricky to know where to start. With literally hundreds and hundreds of options, choosing the one that looks the nicest, has the right features, and actually fits the components you've selected can be really tricky. And that's why today I'll be running through my favorite PC cases right now for a range of different budgets, form factors, and styles, and giving you guys a heads up on how you should actually go about picking a PC case and things to look out for when selecting a chassis for your next build. Let's do this. The GeekaWhat Aorus Master 16 is here with a 240Hz 2560 by 1600 display, up to an RTX 5090 laptop GPU with a staggering 24 gigs of VRAM and Max-Q technology. The choice of CPU spans up to a Core Ultra 9 275HX2 with a turbo of up to 5.4 GHz and 24 cores for maximum power. What's more, there's also up to 64 gigs of RAM and room for a Gen 5 NVMe drive for the ultimate in storage speeds. Learn more at the first links in the description below. Now, before I dive into my recommendations, and I will be working through from the lowest to the highest priced options, I think the best place to start is talking about how to actually pick a PC case in the first place. Now, cases come in a few different form factors, and these form factors are based around the common sizes of motherboards. These motherboards are Mini ITX, Micro ATX, ATX, and eATX. When you check out a case's manufacturer page, on the spec section, it will detail which motherboard sizes are and aren't supported. My advice typically is to put in the right size motherboard for your case. So if you've got a small Mini ITX chassis, you'll be putting in a Mini ITX motherboard. Most Micro ATX cases are suited really to Micro ATX motherboards only, while standard ATX chassis are a best fit for standard ATX size motherboards. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. Some cases will support the eATX standard or extended ATX, something you might not need for your build and something you might not need to include, and some smaller, cheaper ATX cases, like this Lian Li V100, don't look too bad with a Micro ATX board inside. You can see the dead space at the bottom where the motherboard tray is exposed, and some people won't mind this, some people will think it looks frankly awful. Now, in terms of features to look out for when buying a case, there are lots. So here are some of the most important. Now, the first thing I would look at with a case is airflow, and this comes in a couple of different guises. The first would be the mesh or lack of mesh ventilation on the front. Is it a case which prioritizes airflow above all else? And if it isn't, where is the airflow coming from? So in the case of this chassis, we've got our intake actually around the back and our exhaust at the top. Also look at the number of fans that are included. I count this within the whole airflow conversation. Does it come with fans as standard, or do you have to buy your own? And if it does come with fans, are they any good? Are they RGB? Is there an inbuilt fan controller? What does that look like? Some cases may seem perceivably more expensive than the competition, but when you dig into the detail, it's because they have fans and the competition chassis simply do not. Spending an extra $20 or $30 on a case and getting extra fans in exchange can actually save you money down the line, so don't write off slightly more expensive cases. Another big feature to look at with PC cases is the I/O. Now, this is a very standard I/O with a pair of USB 3 ports, a single Type-C, a headphone mic combo jack, and a reset and power button. That tends to be the standard. Some cases on the budget end will exclude things like USB-C. There's actually a case from Fractal Design where the USB-C bit of the I/O is an aftermarket purchase, which is ridiculous. And some cases will actually give you more than 2 USB Type-A's, they'll give you more than 1 USB Type-C, and if that's the case, you'll need to check your motherboard can actually facilitate that with its onboard front panel connectors. Another big feature to look at in a case is the compatibility that that case has. Now, there's a few key metrics to note with compatibility, and these revolve primarily around 3 components: the CPU cooler, the graphics card, and the power supply. CPU coolers, we've got 2 types, air and liquid. Now, this particular case has an air cooler installed, and here what we're concerned with is the height of the cooler. Different cases, depending on their depth, will support different heights and forms of CPU air cooler. We can see in this case we've got a good bit of margin spare, and you'll be able to easily find on the manufacturer's website the maximum height of the tower air cooler that's supported, and you'll be able to match this up with the specification given on the air cooler's product page. In terms of liquid coolers, we're concerned with one thing only really, and that's radiator support. Liquid coolers have different size radiators, whether it be a 240mm, a 360mm, and what we want to do is make sure that radiator will fit in the case. In this particular chassis here, you can see we've got a 360mm rad at the top, and we know that that's supported because on the product page for the AP202, it says, yes, I support a 360mm rad. The only only thing to be aware of here is where the radiator is going to go. I often like to have the radiator at the top of the case, but you might want it at the front. Just because the case supports a 360 or 420mm rad doesn't mean it will support it in necessarily multiple locations. Typically, the bigger the case, the more radiator support you're going to have and the more options you're going to have for cooling. The next key compatibility to look at is graphics cards. Now you can see here the graphics card length is all about how big of a GPU we can fit in from back of the case to the front. Now in a lot of cases where you've not got a huge amount of impedance at the front, your GPU support is going to be relatively pretty massive. In instances where you've got fans or radiators, that can dig into your maximum GPU length. And again, it's a case of looking at the GPU size on the GPU manufacturer's product page and matching this up with the maximum GPU size that the case you've gone for supports. The final thing to be concerned with in terms of compatibility is power supplies. And again, this is all about the length of the PSU. Now you can't see it from the front, but we'll get you some good B-roll. The power supply in this case is mounted around here. Under the case, there's only so much length where the power supply can go. This can be impeded by things like drive cages, which get in the way, though they're often removable, so can actually help you out. And power supply length is actually more complicated than our other metrics for one key reason: the cables. When you look at a maximum PSU length spec on a case product page, this often doesn't account for the fact that you need to connect cables into the end, and this will of course add excess length. Another thing to look for in terms of features and compatibility is whether the case supports reverse connect motherboards. Now you can see in this particular chassis here on our motherboard tray, we've got a series of cutouts, and that's to facilitate motherboards where all the power and front panel connectors are actually rear mounted. That's going to help with cable management, but of course you need the right cutouts in the right places. Often the case product page will just say whether or not the case does or doesn't support reverse connect motherboards. The final thing to note really is cable management. Cable management is all about the number of integrated tie down points, included Velcro loops, that you've got to actually manage the cables at the rear of your build. Cheaper cases tend to have less cable management options, and honestly this is fine, because in a more simple build like this one here, which costs around about £1,000, $1,000, you've not got many cables to play with. On high-end builds, you might have lots of fans, a liquid cooler, you might have an LCD display in there somewhere, you might have a load of RGB, all of that needs cable managing. So think about cable management on those higher end options. Now that then is a good whistle-stop tour of what I think you should and shouldn't know about buying a PC case, but what are my actual favourites? James, what are you recommending? The first case I want to talk about is this. Now this is Lian Li's pretty much brand new V100R, and I've been incredibly impressed with this case from the moment it entered the studio. Despite its fairly compact form factor, you still get room for up to a 360mm radiator at the top, support for fairly tall air coolers with a maximum height of 178mm, power supplies of up to 220mm in length, and GPUs up to 420. That's thanks to the lack of any fans at the very front of the case, which of course helps to increase that GPU clearance. It is a single chamber PC case. That means it's got one big chamber with the power supply mounted at the bottom and all your cables at the rear. What I like though is that Lian Li have gone for this really nice angled tempered glass side panel on the side and given you that fish tank style aesthetic with glass on two of those panels. Where they've done a great job though comes in the form of the included fans. You get 4 of Lian Li's ARGB 120mm fans, and all of this for a price of around $79, or here in the UK around £69, and that's with the fans included. You also get nice extra inclusions like an RGB strip down the bottom here, which looks really fantastic and is again something you'll pay a nice price premium for on higher end cases. The I/O is side mounted, which I think looks absolutely fine, and the cable management at the rear is good too. Support for reverse connect motherboards is present as well, and you get good support for cooling with the option to swap out the rear fan for a 140mm unit and a side intake, which is obviously going to be worse for temperatures than a full mesh panel, but I think just looks loads better. Overall, I really like this case, and while it does sacrifice on areas like airflow, it does give you a really nice design at a fantastic price point. Now, there are lots of good options on the budget end of the market though, and my second option is in some regions similarly priced, and in some regions actually a little bit cheaper than the Lian Li V100. It is this. There we go, hopefully that worked and didn't look completely shit. Anyway, this is the Montech King 65. This is a fairly chunky dual chamber PC case that gives decent radiator support with a 360mm at the top and up to a 240mm on the side at the same time, air cooler height of up to 175mm, and again, pretty long GPUs of up to around 420mm in total. This is my favourite budget dual chamber PC case, and pricing on this thing is absolutely crazy. Now on Newegg, you can pick the Pro up right now for as little as $85, and here here in the UK, you can actually find it for as low as under £60. Now, like basically all of the cases today, it's available in two different colours, black or white. Now, the black one does have quite a heavy tint on the side panel, but removing the panel unveils what is a really, really nice layout. Now, you can see inside that we've got our motherboard tray with two 140mm side-mounted intake fans, included as standard, and a 120mm exhaust. Those fans are wired up to a built-in and included RGB and fan hub, which not only powers these three fans, but also allows you to plug in additional fans and additional RGB accessories, which is great. All the panel quality on this is really nice, with full mesh at the top and full mesh at the back. We get additional room at the bottom for fans, so you could mount some 120s or 140mm down the bottom too, if you like. If I spin it round, you can see we've got a built-in door at the back here to help nicely hide those cables away. And if we swing this open, you can see loads of room for cable management. This case is actually our best-selling PC case on GeekaPC.com, and that's our UK pre-building company. We love building in it. We've done so many of these systems now. We just love this thing so much, and for the price, it's virtually unbeatable. It's for those reasons that this case scores pretty high, and while there are some compromises with things like airflow, I think it excels when it comes to value for money and design. Moving through to my final budget-oriented recommendation for today, and I'm recommending this, the Phanteks XT Pro Ultra. Like the last King 65 Pro, you get room for a 360mm rad at the top and up to a 240mm rad at the front. Power supply clearance is very strong at up to 270mm, and air cooler height again remains pretty standard at 184. GPU clearance is 415mm by default, but of course if you put a radiator at the front, that is going to reduce the GPU clearance, so be mindful of that. Now, not only is the build quality again really, really good, it's what you'd expect from a name brand like Phanteks, and inside again you get a more traditional layout. This case is really great because it provides a huge amount of airflow. Now, whether that comes from the 140mm included ARGB fan at the rear, or actually the full mesh ventilation at the front, which behind houses three further 140mm ARGB fans as standard. That's right, this case comes with four 140mm ARGB fans, and they're decent fans as well, all for the price of the chassis. That is extraordinary value for money. Things like drive mounting are more restricted, and cable management isn't the best. You can see the inbuilt cables come organised, but they don't really have a natural home, and when you've got the motherboard installed, there isn't a huge amount of forgiveness, shall we say, for hiding the cables away. Again, the airflow is fantastic at the top of the case, and the great thing here is you can install a 360mm rad, which I know a lot of you guys will, without actually losing access to those three 140mm fans at the front. It gets the fundamentals right, and if you want a case that focuses on airflow and temperatures, this will beat out thermally a lot of far more expensive cases just on the basis of this four included fan design. It's for that reason that this case ranks very high in metrics like, as I say, airflow and value for money, but loses points on features and design which are a little bit more plain and simple. Now, the next case on today's list is an unlikely entrant, and this right here is the AP202 from, wait for it, ASUS. And I have to say, it's one of my favourite cases ever. It's just awesome. It gives you good support and clearances overall, with room for a 360mm rad at the top, power supply lengths of 200mm, air coolers of up to 175mm, and again, long GPUs of over 400mm in length in total. So it kind of operates within a standard single chamber form factor, but is technically dual chamber. The reason being is the actual top and the bottom of the case are separate. So the power supply down here has its own separate airflow, the main chamber has its own separate airflow too, and you get this absolutely stunning tempered glass side panel that curves around the front. Again, it's available in black or white, the I/O is solid, and the airflow is pretty good. The only thing about it I don't like, and I hope ASUS will address this soon, is that all of the fans by default come in an exhaust configuration. I guess the idea is you mount intake fans on the bottom and you pull in air through here, which is fine, but as standard, the case should come in a state where you can turn it on and the fans are in the right direction. All they need to do is flip these two fans around or swap them out, preferably with reverse blade fans instead. This case is a little unusual because you only get support from micro ATX motherboards. That does help to make the case a smaller form factor though, which I like. All the panels and stuff are really easy to remove. There's a lot of toolless design in here. The build quality feels really, really good. And the kind of unusual thing about it is that at the back, it looks like one single piece of metal, despite actually being split at the front. Now you can see here cable management is okay. This is a system that I put together fairly quickly for a recent build, but you can see with a bit more time, effort and attention, you could get the cables in here looking really quite pretty. The attention to detail on things like cable colours is really good too. The integrated fan and RGB cables are all fully white, as are the JFP1 front panel cables. You get good room to actually run all of your cables through. You don't get support for reverse connect motherboards, which I find a little bit strange considering ASUS are one of the biggest motherboard vendors out there, but it does everything else really rather nicely. It's for that reason that it excels on things like design and that innovative airflow approach, but is a little more expensive, so loses a few points on value for money. Now, the next case I want to talk about is actually my second and last Montech entrant to the list. I am of course talking about the Montech King 95 Pro. It's available in black or white. It supports radiators of up to 360mm at the top and 240mm on the side, air coolers of 175, GPUs of 420, and this is a very similar chassis to the King 65 Pro, and again, it's another one of my favourites. This was one of the first cases to actually do the curved tempered glass, but you'll be able to see here that it's actually two pieces rather than one piece, as you'll find on the AP202. Who knows, Montech might update this case to actually make it a two-piece design. I'd love to see that. What makes this case an extraordinary value option though is the fans. Once again, Montech have got this right. Now we get three included 120mm reverse blade fans. ASUS, if you're listening, you get two 140mm reverse blade fans. ASUS, are you listening? And you get a 120mm exhaust at the rear as well. Now it follows a lot of the same design language and the same tooling, I would imagine, as the 65. And you can see that's pretty evident when you look at the door here. And if we remove this rear door at the back, you'll see what I mean with that fan and RGB hub. It's all nicely wide to the top. All of the cables are colour matched too. The only ones that aren't are the SATA power cables, which you're not going to see anyway, so that's fine by me. You can see we've got 3 spare ports for your fan and RGB, which is great considering you get 6 fans included. And I think this is the most fans included of any case on my roundup today, which is really quite extraordinary. That's not to say there aren't some areas for improvement. This door is going to impede airflow slightly for the fans, despite the fact they've added lots and lots of holes. That could be looked at. And I do think the top panel, while it looks rather nice, the quality could be slightly better. There is a bit more flex in here than you would like, and this curved metal trim here is a little thin and can be prone to potentially morphing a little bit. The white colourway looks fantastic, as does the black colourway, and things like the nice RGB strip at the front just set it off in a way that other cases are not. It's for that reason that this case scores full marks for design in my book. I think it looks phenomenal, and the feature set of this chassis is really strong too. The next case I want to talk about today is this, the NZXT H6 Flow. In terms of specifications, on paper it looks like a fairly standard ATX mid-tower. You get radiator support of 360mm, air cooler support of 163, and GPUs a little on the shorter side of around 365mm in total. Now the reason I wanted to include this case is because it's one of the very first cases to introduce this new fan intake design. They don't mount them at the rear or necessarily the front, but actually split the difference with a 45-degree angle on the side, the back. I guess it's kind of neither. They do different models, ones with and without RGB fans. You still get support for radiators and things at the top. The radiator support on this side intake is a lot more tricky. The clearance there isn't great. And they add this recessed fan design at the bottom so you can have intake fans that sit nice and flush. It is a dual chamber PC case as well, which is rather nice, but it's a little bit smaller. And NZXT have also moved towards this new mesh ventilation on the panels that integrates things into one. It looks sleeker, and I imagine it's slightly more affordable for them to manufacture. NZXT have had a slightly rocky couple of years with a few incidents, shall we say, but I do think their newly refreshed line of cases, the new H6, the new H7, the new H5, even the new H3, are all really, really nice cases, and I think they've done a pretty good job with all of them. This case scores pretty well from me. It doesn't necessarily knock it out of the park on any individual metric, but it's very well balanced and does a good job overall. Next up on my list is a case that I really was impressed with when I got it in for review, and is actually an update on an existing and highly popular design. This right here is the Corsair Frame 4000D. Here you can actually mount a radiator at the top of up to 360mm, a radiator at the front, and you can also put a 360mm radiator on the side. You get maximum length support on the power supply of 220mm, air cooler height of 170, and again, the longest GPUs of any case so far at 430mm in total. Now the 4000D from Corsair, released a few years back, was one of the best-selling PC cases ever. And Corsair have rightly revisited a popular design and made a boatload of improvements. Now, the major change Corsair have made visually is the mesh. This new mesh design looks to really promote airflow in every way possible. Wherever Corsair can put a gap for air to come in or to escape, they've basically done so. The front design here not only looks different, but they've actually added a 3D effect, which they say increases airflow by a good few percentage points. And you can see, like the original, this is nice and easy to remove. Now, the top panel build quality feels really pretty good. This can be pulled off with a handle. And underneath this, we're going to see Corsair's new InfiniRail fan mounting design. If I actually flip this case over, what you can see here is we've got a rail, and this rail is actually adjustable with these screws. That means you can pull it in for 120mm form factor fans and radiators, or push it out for 140mm designs instead. The front goes even further with adjustment for fans even larger than the 140mm form factor, again giving you loads of options. Corsair have also finally added in long awaited features. That includes things like this adjustable GPU support bracket here, which is practical and works really well. You can also see they've added reverse connect motherboard support, which is rather nice too. You can now mount fans on top of the bottom power supply shield. We've got a much bigger cutout at the front for large radiators. Corsair have also made some changes around the back of the chassis. Not only do we have fully white cables with this nice little sleeving at the bottom to protect them, that's a cool feature. We get an enormous amount of points for actually mounting and securing cables. You can see there are literally cable tie down points everywhere, and I think they've genuinely done a really good job. If you want a more traditional form factor and style of case, it might not look the prettiest case, but it's going to do airflow, it's going to do the build process, it's going to do your whole system really well for years to come. All in all, this is a case that scores really well for me, building on the success of the previous generation 4000D with a great feature set, a good design, really strong airflow, and actually solid value for money, especially for Corsair. Now, for my next case today, you're kind of going to have to just imagine it being here, because in typical GeekaWhat high preparation fashion, it's at our case storage unit. Yes, we have so many cases, they have their own storage unit, but it is the Lian Li O11D Mini V2. And don't let size deceive you, because its clearances are actually pretty strong. From the 360mm rad at the top to the 240mm rad clearance at the side, and room for a 160mm tall air cooler, it's fairly good on the cooling front. And GPUs aren't too bad either, with a clearance of 400mm. Now, if you've been a long time viewer of the channel, you'll know that I loved Lian Li's original O11D Mini. And Lian Li are the OG dual chamber fish tank PC case company, at least in the modern case era. The O11D Mini V2 makes some key improvements over the first gen design. It allows you now to mount full-size ATX power supplies rather than the SFX form factor before. It angles the fans at the bottom of the case and just gives you better cooling compatibility overall. Again, it's available in black and white. It's got this cool angular design for the airflow that allows it to pass under the feet at the front and rear of the case, and just all in all looks really rather fantastic. Now, you might be wondering why it's so far along the list in terms of costs, because it's actually quite a cheap case. But it all comes down to what fans are included. And on the base model, you get none. And to make it look traditionally special in the Lian Li way, you will have to spend quite a lot of money on nice fans. This is a case that, in my opinion, is only really worth picking up if you're going to fill it, and I mean fill it, bottom, side, top and rear with fans that look good. It's this wraparound aesthetic and awesome fan support that scores this case high for me on the features and design fronts, but it does undoubtedly sacrifice airflow and a bit of value for money when you consider its overall score. And with that brings me on to the final two cases. And the first one is actually kind of two cases. This, the Hyte Y70 Touch, or the Hyte Y70. Both of these cases offer up extensive cooling support with room for 360mm rad at the top and the side, tall air coolers of 180mm, and GPU clearance well over the 400mm mark at 422. The only thing that's a shame is to see a lack of 420mm radiator support, as that's something I think really should have been included. Hyte are a brand that really surged, basically out of nowhere, to immense success with their original Hyte Y70. And this Y70 version is a larger design that takes all the good bits and makes it bigger. Now, the first thing you'll notice is this weird thing dangling in the case. This is a PCI riser, and what's special about this is that it's one of the only cases to support vertical GPUs, both as the default and only position, and to give you the actual Gen 5 riser cable that you'll need to actually mount a vertical GPU. Now, this Hyte case is pretty special for a few reasons. We can mount loads of fans down the bottom here to actually pull air under the chassis. We get, again, our side-mounted intake and our top-mounted exhaust, and you can see this like slatted grid pattern which follows in lines all around the case and even extends onto onto the rear panel. It's a dual chamber case, but it actually trims the rear chamber back to give you this sort of L shape at the front, and is available, as you'll see here, with a screen. That's right, it's got a 4K touchscreen. I think there's now a cheaper 1080p touchscreen as well. What's cool about this case too is it's available in an enormous range of slightly incredibly ridiculous colours. Blueberry milk, strawberry milk, and taro milk. Maybe not for me, but I actually like that they do something different, and it's just nice. A lot of people have copied what Hyte have done with the Y60 and Y70, but there is nothing like the original, and I think that Hyte have done the best job of anybody at this kind of case design. The only thing is you'll pay a hefty price premium for it. This thing, it ain't cheap. It's for that reason that this case doesn't score particularly well on the value for money front, but the features are undoubtedly top class and the design is absolutely fantastic. And finally, for the last case today, and the heaviest, this is one of my favourite cases ever, for a very, very small, specific group of people. Now, this is the HAVN HS420. This is a really special case that's like nothing else on the market. It supports 420mm radiators, and this is both at the top, the bottom, and the side. You get air cooler clearance of over 185mm, and GPU clearance at a staggering 480mm. You get this beautiful curved tempered glass side panel, which has a really, really tight radius on. The corner on this thing is so strong. Integrated GPU support bracket. The vGPU version comes with an integrated PCI Gen 5 riser for the graphics card. All of the cable routing options are stunning. The grommets are designed like you've never seen before. You actually get room for 2 fans at the back, one in exhaust and one in intake. And these really, really nice airflow slats that look classy and just feel fantastic. This is a case that isn't for everyone. It's expensive, though not as expensive as you might expect given the amount of metal and glass that goes into a case like this, but it needs to be filled. You need a large motherboard, ATX or even E-ATX. You need a big GPU that you can show off in a vertical mount configuration, and you need nice fans. And those fans, they don't come cheap. I love it though, and it reviewed really well when we first took a look at it this time last year. The only thing I'd love to see is maybe a slightly smaller version, because this is definitely not going to fit on my desk at home. With a great feature set and awesome design and really well optimized airflow, this case scores really highly across the board, and only really sees a lower score on the value front, where it's undoubtedly quite a lot more expensive. So they then are my favourite cases and some of my recommendations for things to look for when buying a PC case. Was this video useful, informative, entertaining? I hope so. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.